Hello. I'd like to welcome you to the Midwifery Advisory Council meeting. I'm Claudia Brelia, Vice Chair of this committee. Ms. Holzer apologizes that she cannot be here today. I would like to remind you to turn off your cell phones or set them on silent. This meeting is being webcast. If you would like to provide public comment, please fill out a speaker slip in the back and give it to Ms. Moriarty. Ms. Moriarty, thank you. As a reminder, during today's meeting, any items requiring a vote will be done by roll call vote. This means that once a motion is made and seconded, Ms. Moriarty will call each of the names individually to request our vote. I would now like to call the meeting to order and ask that Ms. Moriarty please call the roll.
Ms. Abe?
Present.
Dr. Adams? Ms. Brelia?
Present.
Ms. Dugan?
Present.
Ms. Perez?
Present.
Ms. Holzer? We have a quorum.
Thank you. Moving to item number 2, public comments not on the agenda. I have a speaker slip from Rachel Fox Tierney, licensed midwife, certified professional midwife.
Hi, I'm Rachel Fox Tierney, licensed midwife, and I wanted to bring to the board an issue that's come up, particularly in our county regarding Social Security applications with our families. This has been an ongoing issue, and we've tried lots of solutions for that. It's related, I wrote on their birth certificate because it's sort of related. The families that are disproportionately discriminated against are families of color in our community. I know that other counties in California have issues around Social Security or birth certificate. My solution, so I can give you the story, but I can give you what my solution is, which is that licensed midwives in California should be able to register electronically birth certificates. If we were able to do that, then we would be able to request the Social Security number at that time of registration. In other states, their licensed midwives or CPMs are able to do this process, and it streamlines it. It also makes it a little bit more timely process. Even states that don't have legislation, their midwives have access to electronic registration. I think also here in California, we're at a perfect time to do that because we've just changed over from a software-based registration, which was AVIS, to now it's a web-based system. So I'm not sure if this is something that is in your purview, but we need to, as licensed midwives, be able to do this. So there you go.
Thank you. Could you please elaborate a little further on the difficulties that our clients are having?
So here in Sacramento County, we've had difficulties probably for as long as I can remember, at least 10 years, in terms of providing documentation that's acceptable by the Social Security office in Sacramento counties. And every county is different in their interpretation of the documentation that they accept. All counties require the birth certificate, which is not difficult to obtain, but then it's the secondary documentation. Last year, our county, the licensed midwives got together and we actually did an in-service for the Social Security office because, like many other agencies, really don't know who we are and what we do and what our scope is. And so we had gotten a system that was going to work for them, that would make it an easy process. And that worked for about 6 months, and now we're back to square one again because certain individuals in the office are now in a more position of authority to make it difficult. And this is an issue because for many folks, they need that Social Security number in order to access their health insurance, and so it can delay processing of other aspects of their life.
Can I ask a question about that?
Hold on a second, because I need to clarify process. So public comment should just be, you make a comment. There's not back and forth because it's not an agendized item, and we wouldn't want to be in violation of the Open Meeting Act. So, one option is that when there's a call for future agenda items, you can put this on, and then there can be further discussion. But there should not be a back and forth between members and the public, but, it sounds like a great topic to bring forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Agenda item 3 is approval of the minutes from the March 7th, 2019 Midwifery Advisory Council meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the March meeting minutes from members? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from the March MAC meeting as submitted?
Motion to approve the March meeting minutes as submitted.
And a second?
Second the motion.
Thank you. Any public comment from the audience? No. Ms. Moriarty, please perform the roll call.
Ms. Abe? Ms. Abe?
Yes.
Ms. Bralia?
Yes.
Ms. Dugan?
Approve.
Ms. Perez?
Approve.
So agenda item 4 is the report from the Midwifery Advisory Council Chair, and I will be reading Ms. Holzer's report. She says, I attended the medical board meeting on August 9 to get our agenda approved. There were no questions from the board. There will be slight alterations to our agenda today. We will not be hearing from Rosanna Davis regarding the CALM survey on physician care for midwifery clients. That item will be moved to our December meeting. There needs to be further analysis done on the survey to make it meaningful. We will also not be forming a strategic plan today, as it was determined that given the MAC is an advisory council of the medical board and they already have a strategic plan, it is not appropriate for the MAC to have its own strategic plan. Therefore, we're back to discussing goals for the coming year. We have talked about many ideas, including educational campaigns to bring awareness about midwifery both to physicians and the general public, revision of the practice guidelines, revision of the hospital transport form, developing a transport form and protocol for midwives to use similar to the Home Birth Summit forms, and we have talked about grand rounds. I have been hearing from midwives in the state that their clients are having a very hard time filing for Social Security numbers and birth certificates. Midwives would like to be able to file birth certificates online like the hospitals. I look forward to our discussions. And unfortunately, she is not here to hear them. So moving to agenda item number 5. Are we? Oh,
I'm sorry. You can ask for comments from the members and comments from the
okay.
public.
Are there any comments on the president's report from the members?
I have a question. I'm just wondering, what is the medical board's strategic plan? What does it look like, and can we look at it? Do we have access to that too?
Yeah, it's online and available by keyword search, and we can email you a copy also.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comment from members? From the audience?
Rosanna Davis with California Association of Licensed Midwives. I just wanted to clarify that we decided not to do the presentation today on the survey based on the fact that one of the very important questions, only 2/3 of the midwives that participated in the survey answered the question. And so we would like to get clarification on that. And it was the question, are you able to refer to a physician for condition and the physician to make a determination, subsequent determination. And so we'd like to get more information about that. It's an important question to get asked, but maybe we need to reframe the question and require some kind of answer rather than people opting out. So, thanks.
Thank you. Any other comment? Okay. So we're going to do 5.
You can raise it and
Okay.
members can decide what to do with it.
Okay, so agenda item number 5 is discussion and possible action on establishing 2019 goals for the Midwifery Advisory Council. Do we have any comments from the board?
Maybe you can clarify what I can answer on that. When we're clarifying goals, are these ideas that we're going to be bringing forth as goals? Is that what?
Yeah, things that we might want to work on in the coming year. I think it's important to remember that we are a consumer service. We're under a consumer service agency, so everything that we do as an advisory council has to be based on the welfare of our clients and things that will benefit our clients and not solely midwives. But we should definitely, I believe, talk about some things that we can affect and advise the medical board on.
I had been looking over different various midwifery advisory councils in different states like Arizona and Washington and Texas. And I wanted to have an idea of what they have been providing to their community. And 2 things that really stood out to me that I wanted to figure out how to bring up as goals, if it sounds good to our community, is a newsletter. I think it's really fantastic that Washington has a newsletter and that's available to everybody. The other thing was I was really impressed with Texas's summit. They provide 2 summits a year. And in that summit, they actually had, various speakers come on that help kind of bridge that gap between EMS and midwives. I believe I've been told we've done that in the past, but I thought that, especially with all the new midwives that we are now seeing come in, that it would be a fantastic way to bridge that gap between all the communities. So those were 2 ideas that I had.
I would like to bring to the members' attention that the medical board does have a newsletter, and we have had Ms. Sparavon write an article, and there's been midwifery articles included in the newsletter, and so there is a vehicle for doing that that would be very beneficial.
I don't think I've seen that. I will definitely look. Is that
Right. If you all are not subscribers to the medical board, and there's a bunch of different ways to subscribe, but I would recommend subscribing to everything that's available, and then you would get newsletters, you would get meeting notifications regarding regulations, and notifications regarding accusations filed in discipline.
And is that specifically towards midwifery? That
It would include midwives and all of the board's licensees.
Anyone else?
So I was thinking, oh, sorry. How's that? Is that better? Is one suggestion just to start, because can this be a standing agenda item? I'm not sure. I guess I feel conflicted. We only have one more meeting for this year. So I'm not sure how productive it is to set a goals in the limited amount of time that we have. It doesn't seem reasonable without any research, other discussion, planning, and maybe people came to the meeting not even knowing what to expect without preparing the public. There's a lot of great things that we can accomplish. I do have ideas, but I just think that this might not be enough time. So that was my first suggestion.
This can appear as a future agenda item, and I think you raise a good point. But if there are things that you want to see in legislation, now is a good time to talk about that. But otherwise, this body puts forward what it wants to see on its agenda. The agenda is approved by the medical board, and so you can revisit this as often as the board approves.
Excellent. I like to suggest it should just be ongoing until it's too much pressure to try to set goals right now. We should just take our time and work on the goals. But I did have another suggestion as I prepare for today's meeting. So I saw the medical board, they have some type of loan repayment for physicians who serve underserved communities. And I thought, wow, that would be great for midwives. So I just wanted to toss that out, and I didn't do enough background research to explain it, but they have a committee that's for that. So there's some templating for us to do something like that. And in that way, we could even use that to encourage more midwives to be a part of getting their license and serving and changing maternal outcomes.
So I'm not sure what we do next about this. I would like to say, as a goal, I would like to see us prepare a report for the medical board on the issues regarding Social Security cards for our clients, and with an eye towards possibly getting electronic submission of birth certificates available to midwives doing home births, because that seems like the way to ease the process. But anyone in the audience, anybody else on the board have comments?
I do, yeah. To speak to what Ms. Ab was saying, also some states do tax credits if you serve rural or underserved communities. I would love to see legislation headed in that direction for midwives. And I would also personally love to see a public education campaign to bring more awareness to midwifery and its impact on outcomes in the state of California as a whole. I don't think that's reasonable to get done by December, but I think we could start doing a landscape analysis or talking about the next steps in terms of what that might look like.
Thank you. Any comment from the audience?
Carrie Sparavon, member of the public and licensed midwife. I'd like to remind the MAC members that historically, sometimes we start something in 1 year and it may take a year or two to actually complete it. So brainstorming ideas now is not a bad thing. If it doesn't happen by December, which seems kind of unlikely, I agree with you, it can be carried over into following years until the list is complete or other things take precedence. I would really like to see as a goal a revising of the guidelines because they were a really important document that licensed midwives in the state came together to create in 2005, and they have not been revised since then as actual, guidelines for us. And there is a lot of new evidence out there now for certain practices, and I would be happy to serve on a task force to that end since I'm one of the original authors of that standard of care that became the guidelines. So, thank you.
Would anyone else like?
Rosanna Davis. I would like to second, third, the idea that we perhaps collaborate on a series of articles for the medical board newsletter. I think it's important that there be multiple eyes on such articles, that they not only be reviewed by licensed midwives for their accuracy and their presentation, but also by members of the public who benefit from licensed midwifery care, and as well as medical board staff. I would also like to generally ask if there is a stated audience of the medical board newsletter. Is it mostly, maybe that can be answered here, maybe not. And the general purpose. Maybe the newsletter says that. I'm not sure. Do you know?
It goes out to anyone who subscribes and to licensees. It's directed toward there's consumer information as well as licensee information, and it is heavily geared towards physicians, but that's where it depends on the articles that are coming out at the time.
Okay, thank you. I would like to request that we revisit the new Elmar reporting system and see if we can get the system to provide a summary of the midwife's data right before she submits it so that she can double check it for accuracy. I think we're planning on doing that, and I just want to make sure that that gets followed through on. Another thing that's come up is regarding our survey about refusals of care for licensed midwife clients, is that sometimes these more egregious situations, we're being advised to tell the clients to file complaints against hospitals or physicians. But the response that we get is that the midwives and the clients are afraid of retaliatory behavior, and it would be just helpful to get some advice about how to handle that, how to manage it. Maybe we could get a report from a midwife who has some experience doing this. Anyway, just one idea for discussion. And this is particularly a problem in the smaller rural communities, because there might just be only a handful of doctors or one hospital in the area. We've had a lot of trouble recently with one of the medicals and medication suppliers, and I just wanted to update everyone that we've got a potential solution for that with McKeeson and ordering supplies. And actually, that didn't belong here. Oh,
This is
and
goals, right?
goals, right. So I guess I had that on my list because we were trying to work through that problem, and I was going to ask the MAC to look at it, but I think we may have come up with a solution, so I'll check that off. One last thing is that COM has been collecting a list of legislative items to take to the legislature to better integrate midwives. And if you want, at some point, I can share that list. I didn't come prepared to do that today, though.
Thank you. Is there any other comment? Okay.
My name is Madeline Chernock. I'm a licensed midwife. I have a suggestion for a goal, and it would be to specifically address access to licensed midwives for women on Medi-Cal. I come to these meetings because I want to hear about that, and I never hear about it really. So please do that, and please keep doing that. Thank you.
Madeline, can I ask you to clarify that just a little more of what is that?
I think
I'm just trying to understand what exactly I only understood a little piece of it. I know it's a really important subject, so I'm not sure.
briefly, but we need to
can't do the back
really
and
get in the
forth,
habit
right?
of not doing the back and forth. So
Okay.
you make
The
a
record to
comment.
show Medi-Cal midwives. Please help that be a goal for the MAC, because more than half of the women in this state use Medi-Cal. It's a really big deal. Yeah, you got it. Picking up what I'm
And
putting down.
I can explain further. This is tied to regulations.
Yes.
So because the regulations have not been completed under the requirement for AB 1308, then this was part of the negotiation. Midwives can't accept Medi-Cal until those regulations are done.
That's not true. That we can't accept Medi-Cal?
There's, I'm sorry.
This is news.
Yes.
I have to go. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I-
Yeah, more as a consumer advocacy entity, I would expect more attention to be paid to people who use Medi-Cal just in general. We have really great research suggesting that they want midwives and can't connect to them. So I really liked your idea about advocating for some sort of loan forgiveness or incentive for training or opportunities for training. I mean, you said goals, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment on agenda item number 5, establishing goals for the Midwifery Advisory Council? Then we will move to agenda item 6.
Oh, I'm sorry, I had a comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's just clarification. So will it be a standing agenda item? We set those at the end, and then how does it work? We're just say this is a goal, and then we don't talk about the goals? Or what are the levels of goal setting?
That's a good question. Do you have an answer? Can we decide? I'm not sure exactly what we can do under the Smith-Bagley-Keene Act in terms of working to move some of these ideas forward into actual recommendations. Can we, as the council, talk about what specific things we would like to work on?
Yeah.
Or, okay.
Yeah, there's a quorum, so you can talk about of these ideas, which ones you want to put effort into researching and develop a plan for, determining whether it requires a legislative change or regulations, or that it doesn't require that and it requires some type of outreach. So that's something that you could discuss.
Okay. And you said we're in a good place in the legislative cycle to bring stuff to the medical board now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would like to propose that we, before the next medical board meeting, put together a report outlining the problems that our clients are encountering in getting birth certificates, because I know in some counties it still can be difficult. And then the further problems that they're having everywhere in being able to access Social Security cards. And another thing that I would like to see is, I don't know, somebody who would write articles or accept articles that we can then send to staff to have them. I'm not sure of the procedure for that. Do we send articles to you and then you send it to put in the medical board newsletter?
That's something we can coordinate with our
Okay.
public information office about the
Okay.
process for that.
Okay, so if somebody wanted to be the point person for that, and I think that's a really great way to begin educating physicians, is have us be very vocal in the newsletter, which, as was pointed out, is geared towards physicians.
So I hear what you're saying is you want to tick through the list that we started today, and or these are your top picks.
These are my top
Okay,
picks.
okay.
I
So
am speaking as a member, not as
no, I understand.
the.
I'm new, my first day on the board,
Yeah.
so I think it helps perhaps if we reread the list that we have so far, just to have a common point, reference point, and then say, okay, we got these top 10, and the four of us can agree to, have a discussion, because it seems like I'm very linear versus us all putting out our own top. If we just say these 10 for now, let's focus on one with the time we have, and then whatever we want to do with that. But I that's a great idea. I guess there's so many good ones I don't want to overlook.
Right. I'd
Overlook
like
any.
to see us do something that is short-term possible, because we have so many long-term things that I think that it would be nice to have some shorter-term things that we can actually see progress on.
Absolutely. So read the short-term and the long-term list. is what
Okay,
I'm
well, we have the list from the minutes from last,
hearing. The last meeting.
March.
Were there goals on there?
There was discussion about what our goals should be. There was a suggestion that we work on a hospital reporting form that would better report what was going on during hospital transfers. There was a suggestion for an educational campaign to bring awareness to midwifery in California. Oh, sorry. There was a suggestion for an educational campaign to bring awareness of midwifery to California.
What was the first one you said?
The hospital reporting form that,
Update the hospital reporting form.
right, so right now hospitals are required to fill out a form when a midwife transfers in a client. And I believe the issue has been that we need to do some further education with hospitals on how to do that and whom to do it for. But also we could make a potentially better form that, possibly the midwife fills out part and gives it to, that we could come up with a way where reporting was done more accurately.
I'm just making a list.
Yeah, that's
just
fine.
Clarifying the ones we have.
Let's see. Updates to the fact sheet for midwives on the Employment Development Department website. Okay, that was. I think that was it for that agenda item from March. That those were the topics. And then at this meeting, the suggestions were to write articles for the medical board newsletter, to look into having licensed midwives included or their own separate loan repayment thing, or educational payment for midwives working in underserved areas. Revising the guidelines for care for California midwives, and addressing access to licensed midwives for Medi-Cal recipients, specifically CPSP, which brings us back to the whole AB 1308 issue. And then Jocelyn said something which I started writing landscape analysis of and don't remember. I think it was about outcomes for.
Sorry, I'm really sick. I think I was thinking that if we just do a landscape analysis of some of the bigger ones, but in terms of our job here as like a public benefit organization, right? We're here to protect the public and do things that are safe, right? So in terms of keeping the public safe, if we pick like a couple of things to see kind of where the work is, who we need to engage, and what it will take, like the timeline, that would make a lot more sense to me than just kind of going down a list. Just because I need to know, like, we're going to need to engage some partners, it seems like. We can't just do all of this in a vacuum. So I don't exactly remember, but that's sort of what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so those are all of the things that we have talked about wanting to have for goals and to work on.
Ms. Brigley, I am waiting to make a comment. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know. Yeah, I just came snuck up here. I just wanted to make sure it was a couple of things were clear when we're looking at the goals. I think, Ms. Dugan, I think your idea is fantastic, sitting down and figuring out what are the things that we need to prioritize, how much resources it's going to take, and more importantly, in looking at a lot of things that you've said, even the loan repayment and the tax credit, all of those would take legislative changes. Those were things that, for the medical board that we have a loan repayment, that was actually done by the California Medical Association. It's something they put into legislation. And so that's something you might want to talk to Rosanna, Ms. Davis about, and talk to her about what their plans are to move forward with any type of legislation. And if they're moving something, that they could include something like that, because that would be outside of the scope of the medical board. And because, again, that is a benefit for the licensee. And so that's something that would completely, and again, remembering our role as Ms.
Right.
Brigley really pointed out in the beginning, that was excellent in looking at your goals to see which of these actually are things that this advisory council should be taking on. And not only that they're taking on, but then remember, you're going to have to submit these to the board for them to review and identify, are these goals that we're going to put resources in that we believe are something that is going to help the consumer protection aspect of it. And then something you might also want to consider is, because these are issues that, will take resources, then even looking at your own council and identifying maybe groups of two that you could split these out that could work on some of these issues that then will be going forward on your goals. And as far as the newsletter articles, that's something, as Ms. Webb said, we can definitely put some of those forward. We're usually really particular about our newsletter articles and who writes them and drafts them. I can even think of maybe, our public information officer contacting some of you and doing an interview with you and saying, as a MAC member, what are some of the goals and what do you want the community to know about? And then we did articles about that, trying to, with Ms. Sparvon, really trying to put to the physicians, these are licensees. You need to work with these individuals. And that was kind of our focus way back when. And then talking about even the hospital transfer form. And we've reached out to CDPH. So some of the partners that Ms. Dugan, you're talking about too, who else needs to be at the table on some of these ideas? So just wanted to make that kind of clear, and looking at how you want to prioritize and what your ultimate goals should be, kind of putting all those avenues in there. Okay.
Ms. Sparrowvon.
Carrie Sparrowvon, licensed midwife. So I would really like to encourage either the formation of a task force to address the revision of the guidelines sooner rather than later, since they are being used in the investigative process and they're not current. I think it might be possible to have members of the midwifery community come together, revise them, submit a draft that could then be finalized by the MAC and put forward to the board to adopt. Or it could be a task force of, a board member and a community member, or, however you want to do it. But I would really strongly encourage that happen now. Thank you.
I agree with Rosanna Davis. I agree with Ms. Sparrowvon, and I just want everyone to know that at a professional level, COM is working on updating guidelines at the professional levels. It's a slow process, but we are working on it. So there might be something to contribute to that from COM.
I was thinking that that might be more of a professional association item than, but I don't know.
Carrie Sparrowvon again. I've actually forgot to say part of the sentence that I think, because it's a document that's on the medical board website that consumers have access to, it's a document that they can look at to inform themselves as to how midwifery care is delivered. And if it's a document that isn't up to date with the most recent research and information, then we're really doing consumers a disservice to not update it. Yes, it's important for midwives to have that information as well, but if it's a document that's published on the website, I think it really needs to be brought up to speed for the consumers. Thank you.
Hello, Celeste Renisi, licensed midwife, CPM. I also would like to express my agreement with both Carrie Sparrowvon and Rosanna. Thank you, Rosanna, in creating a task force to revise our guidelines.
Is there anyone on the council who would like to be part of doing that?
Yes, I would love to be part of doing that, Shaman.
So can we have Shamin be the point person for people to contact to work on the guidelines? Is that something we're allowed to do?
Yes, and you can actually have two members if there's someone else on this body that want to serve on that task force. As the law is right now, that may be changing, but so, or you don't have to. You can assign her, and we can work with her on a plan for that.
Okay. Well, if you are amenable, I would like to assign you the Midwifery Advisory Council point person on revising the guidelines for the practice of midwifery, and we can put out a call, because not everyone is here, to see if there's anyone else who would like to assist you with that.
And I would suggest that because it will require the use of resources, and it is you're making this part of a goal for this agendized action item, that you have a motion and a second that is going to be the one goal or the goal for going forward at this point.
Okay. So how would I?
And I have a suggestion, because it seems like, is it Carrie? She had a few options, so it sounds like resources seem to be a barrier to our goals. So perhaps, I think one of her suggestions was they would submit something, so if it was on the agenda, we could review it, and then if it was adoptable, versus doing a whole committee and more meetings. She just seemed to have other suggestions, so is that, what did you guys think about the other options?
I was wondering that too, if we could ask for maybe Calm to draft something with Carrie and then submit to someone here for us to look at the next meeting and approve. I don't know if that's appropriate, though. Carrie.
I'm going to hear from Kim on this.
So as Ms. Sparron stated, I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but the guidelines actually have been updated since 2005, because there was a group that got together, and those have been amended as of 2014 because of the passage of AB 1308. So they have been brought up to date with the passage of that, and that's what we were using, and that's why they're actually on the website. But there's nothing wrong with updating those guidelines. I mean, we look at, just like on the other side, we have the prescribing guidelines for, controlling pain management. And so those are guidelines, but they are the board's guidelines, and they are, for licensed midwives. So I would recommend that you do a task force of this committee, that this council, 2 members that will get together, and Ms. Perez, thank you. That would be great if you can do that, and we can have another member that go through those guidelines. They can make amendments to them. We can work with staff to do that, and then we will bring them, because it is going to be a board document. And what's great is if Calm is working on this, just as we've done in our guidelines with other associations, those guidelines can be discussed. We could have an interested parties meeting then after we look at the guidelines and see what the committee is kind of recommending, put that draft forward, get comments, and then we can put those forward, and then those would have to go through the board for board approval before we release them. So we could kind of treat it the same way we'd treat any of our guidelines, going through the process of identifying edits, having a interested parties meeting to get comments on those edits, and then bringing them. We could come back to this committee, finalization, and then to the board for their review and approval. Okay.
That sounds.
Carrie Sparrow again. I just want to address the 2014 revisions, because when we did those revisions in 2014, they were aimed specifically at bringing the guidelines in line with statute. They were not updated at all for content of what was in the midwifery scope of practice or outside of it based on new research. I had actually made a suggestion to address the fact that we no longer had the regulation
I think
for VBAC.
Sparafon, this is actually getting into the meat of the document, which should be discussed.
Okay,
as
I
part of
just
the
wanted to
task
be on the
force.
record as saying that they were not updated for any content other than to bring them in line with statute from 2013. That was the only changes that were made.
Okay. So I would like to make a motion that Ms. Perez reach out to members of the community and interested parties who are working towards an update to the guidelines of care. And what was the next step? Submit a draft for what she said. Do that.
It'll really be the task force first of the members of the committee to look
okay.
at the document and see if there's edits that we need to be made. And then from there, you'll have your interested parties meeting. And at the same time, if there's information that another like COM has that they've provided, you look at that in that task force and see what edits they have recommended, and we can incorporate those and then bring it to your interested parties meeting. So you start yourself first working on it. Then we'll go to the interested parties based on your edits. And then, we can always bring it back here again if we have more edits once we make it, before we get the finalized document to the board.
Okay.
Okay.
I think this can be as simple as a motion to make reviewing the guidelines for midwives a goal for the MAC and assigning Ms. Perez as the point person for that task force.
And then we can send an email out to the members to see who wants to be the second member on that task force.
Great.
Okay.
Okay. So I would like to make a motion to create a task force to revise the midwifery guidelines and appoint Ms. Perez as the head of that task force.
Second.
Okay,
Comment?
so any comment?
In public comment?
Public comment? Okay. Ms. Moriarty, can you?
Yes. Ms. Alve?
Yes.
Ms. Bralia?
Yes.
Ms. Dugan?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Okay, is that enough, or would we like to work on something else as well?
I'd like to work on the Medi-Cal situation that came up. I'm just trying to understand how to bring this about. So I think it would be great if we could develop a task force to work on some issues with the Medi-Cal. The lack of the clients are having a hard time finding providers. So the community is having a hard time with access, and the providers are having a hard time with law enforcement because insurance companies are not providing letters of agreement, or even more so, they're not adding midwives into their groups, which means that they're in violation. They're not providing access to their members. So I'm trying to figure out how we could develop some kind of a task force to lay out exactly what that law is for the community to understand. So the community seeking midwives and midwifery care, the midwives seeking to provide that care, and then the institutions to understand what the law says, because I think they're very confused.
So what if we make a task force to look at the goals we came up with today and kind of plan the resources it'll take, the strategic partners, and the timeline, and then we come back in December and like prioritize and vote based on what it all looks like. Because I think Medi-Cal is a hugely important topic. Like, it should be number one, but it's going to take some of the most resources and time, and to know what that looks like, I think would be beneficial. And I think that given our time frame in the next few months, like that's something we could do and parse out some of those pieces, right? Like if we're on a task force, we can say like, here's who we're going to need to work with. Here are the problems we're facing. Here's the timeline and the goals of that particular project, so that we can make sure it's a high priority in December when we want to come and like say we need resources for this, and we need Calm's help or Cam's help or CFAM's help or whoever's help we need. What do y'all think?
I am really interested in working on the issue with clients not being able to get Social Security cards, and issues that we haven't heard from today, but that midwives are having, getting birth certificates even still, which is why I did not say I wanted to be on the task force to look at the guidelines, because I'm trying to not overextend myself as much as I generally do. So that is something that I would really like to be working on. And it feels like something that this is the perfect time, and it's not the huge, long, tangled mess, and it's something that could be a fairly easy fix. While I agree that Medi-Cal is a huge issue, if our clients have access to Medi-Cal but then can't get Social Security numbers for the kids, then the kids can't be on Medi-Cal, right? So I would like to have...
But they can't be your clients if they can't access a licensed midwife in the first place.
Correct.
Right. So I don't know. I think it's a pretty complicated.
Oh, it's all very complicated. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't do that. But I would like to, as my personal priority, work on presenting something to the medical board to hopefully get the Social Security number issue resolved legislatively and done with, so that we can then focus on some of the bigger, more complicated issues. This is assuming that it won't become a big, complicated issue, but...
Can I ask a question about that? Because I'm still unclear about it. Because in my practice, I don't have the problem, and so I think that's where I'm still trying to understand it. So would something at the next meeting look like if we were able to present, so here's just for the consumer and the midwife to understand. The law says that you don't need a birth certificate to get a Social Security number, and you can go down to Social Security and make an appointment, provide these 2 documents according to this law. And because my clients do that, they don't wait for birth certificates. They get their Social Security card the same week that their baby's born.
Wow.
So that's why I'm wondering if maybe the provider and the consumer are not aware of what their rights are. So I'm wondering, is there something that we might be able to present that says, here's what this looks like, and this is the steps that you take if, to the consumer, this is the step you take if your rights are offended, and to the midwife, this is what it looks like if they're not complying.
Well, they're not complying in many, many places. Birth certificates aren't being accepted. Midwives, the affidavits that we sign and the letters that were required, and a number of documents are not being accepted as sufficient at many Social Security offices across the state. And it changes when, according to the relationships, just like birth certificate, the ability to get birth certificates is as well. I really do believe that it would be a fairly easy fix if we could submit birth certificates electronically. You check off the box, and then the client doesn't have to go down and prove that it's their baby and the baby was born in the U.S. and that everything is legit. Like I used to do when I was working illegally in Kentucky, you know? So that's my thing that I would like to work on. If the council does not think that's a priority, then we won't.
Well, I think it's definitely a priority. I think I'm just trying to wrap my head around, I want to solve problems today. I think we're all up here going, look, we're all passionate about this. We want to solve a problem today, but what can we actually attain? So maybe we won't be able to change in the next 3 years how birth certificates are filed, but if we can give a tool to the people, because I don't know the laws, I don't know the rules, but maybe we do need to know what they are and present them so that people understand.
Yeah. Rosanna Davis. Oh, so Shaman, I just wanted to verify that for the last 15 plus years, we have been educating clients and midwives about what the laws are and how to get this done, and it's not working. We come to agreement with local Social Security offices, we educate them, they say, okay, well, we'll agree to take these documents from you, and that'll work for 6 months, and then they just arbitrarily decide they're not going to accept those documents anymore. And it's gone so far as that clerks at the Social Security office have told clients that they just don't trust midwives, where they otherwise trust institutions. And some of this behavior is clearly racist, because if the people are either foreign born, the parents are either foreign born, or they're black, or they're people of color, they're twice and more likely to be refused their applications being submitted. So I think a potential solution for filing these ourselves, we're licensed healthcare providers, we should be able to file for the birth certificate and check off enumeration for Social Security.
I see that as the immediate fix rather than the ongoing endless education that every time we get done with it needs to be redone because everyone's different.
So how would you take steps to get it done electronically, since we know it's possible? It's not like we're trying to make something up. Do you need a whole task force, or is it just a matter of talking with someone that's in charge for the whole state, or does it matter if you want to put a task force together to discuss this more, what options we will have? And is this something feasible?
What has worked in the past, and do you want to speak first?
No, go ahead. I'm going to speak to this topic, but.
Okay, so what has worked in the past with the medical board is, and which I did as president of the California Association of Midwives, is put together a list of these are the issues that our clients are having. These are things that our clients need that they can't get. This is what legislation in other states looks like and how they resolve this issue. And with a cover letter of, this is what we would like to see happen here in California. I could do that. I would need to obviously talk to people about that. I don't know if we're required to have a task force or need to have a task force, or what's the next step here?
You're not required to have a task force, but you can.
Mm-hmm.
every year during the fall board meeting, we consider proposed legislation. And so if this is something that would require legislation, then having a draft legislative language and explaining the circumstances, what's happening, why you think this would resolve the issue would be beneficial.
Okay, so if this is not going to be a goal of the MAC overall, is it something I could do individually and present to the MAC, or have someone else present?
Yes, I think there is benefit where it's coming from the MAC.
I agree.
But it doesn't have to.
Okay.
As I'm sitting here listening to this, it has occurred to me, and maybe this doesn't have anything to do with it, but federally, we're not recognized as a healthcare provider entity. CNMs are, but CPMs and LMs are not yet. And I'm wondering if that is impacting, since Social Security is a federal designation, and that's where they're getting their rules from, that perhaps that's part of the problem. And maybe it would work to get us to do things electronically, but it still might end up being a federal issue that we can't solve here. But I think being able to do birth certificates electronically would be a huge boost to both families and LMs, not having to actually go to the offices to sign the birth certificates and file them. So it's just a thought I had.
Yeah, a birth certificate's also a federal document, and then there's
But they're
the federal
administered by the
requirements.
state.
Right, and then there's state requirements, and then each local office gets to make its own rules. And
Yeah, it just occurred to me that maybe because Social Security really doesn't have anything to do with the state, that might be part of the problem, that individuals in Social Security offices can say, well, we don't trust you because there's no federal designation of licensed midwives or CPMs as care providers.
And remember, the discussion for this needs to be limited to helping you decide if it's going to be a goal of the MAC rather than getting into the meat and of the matter.
I have a question. Do we know if this would be a legislative fix or not?
I believe it would.
It would be.
I believe so, because I believe that state law does not allow, only allows institutions to file electronically.
Okay, thank you.
My name's Madeline Shernock. I'm a licensed midwife, and I've talked with our local offices. I've talked with offices in 10 counties in California. This is an ongoing issue. Everyone tells me that this is a federal legislation issue, not a state legislation issue. It has to do with what Carrie was saying. We're not on the federal provider list. There are exceptions for clinics, but if they see that a midwife signed it through the clinic, they're like, we're not doing this. So it's a federal issue, not a state issue.
Hello, Celeste Duran, EC, LMCPM. From what I understand with my clients in regards to the Social Security, the issue is, and it is federal, but the issue is that when parents go in to apply for Social Security cards, they're rejected. But what I was told at the local office that I had gone to, and they helped me create a letter for my clients, is that the child is the one who needs to be applying for the card, not the parents. And one of the ways, that's because the child is considered an individual. The parents can help the child apply for it, but they're not actually applying for the child. The child is actually applying for it. And so therefore, the way to have the child become an individual is by doing a postpartum visit and verifying that. The thing that I'm having a difficulty with is not so much that they're not able to get their Social Security cards anymore as individuals applying, but that the Social Security offices is requiring or requesting from parents medical records. And from what I understand, that's a HIPAA violation. So when a child is going in for Social Security card, it needs to be the child that's actually applying for it, not the parents. So I don't know how that fits in. I'm thinking that maybe that would be something that you can look into if you decide to do this task force. And I so support doing a task force on this because this is unique in my tiny community, but this is going on all over, and I don't know if people understand that that's what they're requesting. So on the letter that they created for me, it shows that the child is an individual and not of the parents, but as the child.
I'm concerned that we are going too far into the topic, and I'm hoping that you have enough information to determine whether this is going to be a goal that you're going to put resources into. And then if there's an interested parties meeting on it, these comments would be wholly appropriate to work on language, that type of thing.
I just find that Medi-Cal and the Social Security issue are important issues because it's so connected to the work of midwives, to everything. It seems like there's so many variables though, like what could we, it's a big issue. It seems small at first, but that's not gonna be an easy overnight thing. So I'm conflicted with it as a goal, but I feel like just because it's not easy, it doesn't mean it can't be a goal. And I feel like all of our goals are kind of like that, except maybe outreach. So the outreach definitely seems feasible. Also, because that's in the medical board strategic plan, so we would be supporting them. So that would be great. Just before we move on, in case we're going to move on from goals, I just might throw out another unattainable goal. But I don't know what we could do or what would need to change legislative-wise, which is why I brought up the repayment loan plan, just because I'm trying to look at what is the medical board already doing and what could we also tag team on. But how can we increase access to midwifery education? There's still only one school. I don't even think schools know how to apply because I called and asked, how could I apply? And I was told to read the law. So that's not user friendly. So I was just thinking, just as being an advocate for the consumer, that would be something I just want to suggest as a way to tackle. I'm not sure that'd be a long discussion, so just want to suggest that. But there's nothing really user friendly on making there be 2 or 3 schools or what do students need to do. It's amazing we have this many midwives. And one other side point is I noticed that the statistics really don't break down any demographic, like how many Native American midwives are there? You know, like there's nothing like that to even, anyway, just a wish list, adding on.
Ms. Davis?
Thank you for that. You remind me that I don't know how you get this sort of thing done, but periodically the Board of Registered Nurses, in collaboration with other, legislators, do a comprehensive job analysis survey. It's quite extensive, and I don't know, maybe the MAC could look into how we might get that done, and it would include demographic information, and we could take that information to the community colleges to say, look, we need more, we have a midwife shortage. We could use a community college program. Here's the job analysis data and that sort of thing. Thanks.
I think it's important to remember or to make the distinction between practice, between professional development issues like creating more schools and doing a job analysis and all of that, and which affects our clients that, there should be enough midwives to care for them, and things that directly affect our clients, such as, or that directly affects California's consumers, like the inability of a large segment of the population to have Medi-Cal pay for their desired care. So we have the one motion that has passed, that we will revise the guidelines. We'll start work on that. The majority of conversation has been around Medi-Cal, and is there an idea that that anyone has about how to approach that, how to, like, what the actual goal would be? Like, what specific thing you want the MAC to work on?
No, you've worked on this more than I have.
This is such a difficult, because I'm trying to think of a short-term goal that would kind of open up and then that would lead into a longer-term goal for both of the subjects that we've keep kind of going back and forth on.
What I'm thinking is that legislation is proposed in the fall, so that's now. So if we put it, whatever it is, if there's a legislative proposal and we put it off, we're putting it off for another year.
Right.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think maybe we should propose 2 more task force that both of us are on. So in order to do that, I would say, I think it would, how does that work? A task force to try to work on how we can electronically, what needs to be done to create this system. Is it even something that can be done? Is this something that needs to be done at a federal level? What information can we have to present at the next meeting? And goals of how to overcome that. I don't know how to word that as a task force, but I think you would be a great candidate for that.
Thank you.
And I would motion, however that is. And then I would also, I don't know if I can say myself, but I'd like to, motion myself as well to where there were 2 people. And of course, if there was anyone else that would want to try to tackle this.
Okay, so do I make motions or other?
As the chair, typically you would ask for a motion, but you can make a motion.
Oh, okay. So, can you make a motion about a task force to look into how best to tackle the Medi-Cal issue?
Yes.
That
is,
seems like what you're looking
yes, that is
for.
exactly what I'm looking for. I'd like to make a motion to create a task force to come up with how, actually to diagram out what this problem is and ideas of how we can attack it, and ask the public to input other ideas of how to attack this problem in our community.
I'll second that.
Can we have a vote, please?
Okay. Ms. Abe?
Is there?
Oh, further comment? Okay.
Ms. Abe?
Just to clarify, this is to have Ms. Perez and you on the task force?
And me?
That's what she said.
I think there's other people that want that more than I do.
I was thinking about this being, because of our next meeting is in 4 months, and that maybe we could have 2 task forces that we will present. One would be this, and one might be.
I can serve.
I think if we
You would serve with Medi-Cal?
Yeah, I'm fine with
Yeah,
that.
I think if
Great.
we have, there's only 4 of us here, and we're looking at a lot of work, And I believe what I understood was if one person is the point person for that task force, then an email can go out asking who else on the council would like to be part of it so that we don't have to do all the work.
That's great. And then that wouldn't need to wait until the next meeting, but it could start as of, is that correct? Because that was my thought, does that mean we have to wait for them to say yes and then?
Right. Typically, the chair would appoint the task force. So you have, 2 volunteers right now,
Okay.
and you're free to accept their agreement to serve.
Okay, then, did you want to be considered for that task force?
Oh, sure. Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so 3 of you would like to be on a task force of 2 people. So,
The more the better.
Yeah.
well,
And
The task force
there
can
can
only be
only be 2.
only 2. Okay, so you wanted us to do a speech? No, teasing. That's fine. She can go for it.
Well,
can come
I
out.
don't need to be a part of it. I do have some resources, though,
That's
about the issues in Medi-Cal because of the work that I've done with Californians for the Advancement of Midwifery and with Calm that might be useful. So maybe that means an interested parties meeting later. I'm not sure, but I think we should add all those pieces together because I know Calm has a task force already working on this. So that
So
would be useful.
I'm wondering if you might not be the best person to head up the task force and put together what we all need.
Okay.
And you've got a huge job with the guidelines, but you really want to be on this task.
I'm also the only provider in Los Angeles right now. So I feel like I understand really well what's going on. And I definitely would like to help resolve those issues.
Okay. Well,
I'm fine not to.
Okay.
I don't want to squelch anyone's
Okay.
passion.
Then I appoint, you got Jocelyn Dugan and Ms. Perez to the task force to work on Medi-Cal.
And so that will be the motion for a goal under this agenda item. Right?
So
I second that. Is that what we need to say?
I thought we already approved the motion and then I was,
It hadn't been approved because I pointed
I
out
see.
that the motion was for Ms. Perez and you to be on this task force.
okay.
So we need a new motion?
Can we, okay.
So go again.
Okay, I make a motion for us to have a task force to identify some of the issues with Medi-Cal and to have Ms. Perez and Ms. Dugan be on that task force.
Second.
Comment? Discussion? Okay.
Ms. Abe,
Yes.
Ms. Brelia,
Yes.
Ms. Dugan,
Yes.
Ms. Perez.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes,
That felt like work.
Okay, so can I make another motion? I'm just gonna see if this works. To have another task force to look into. Sure, is that better? To have another task force with Ms. Brelia at the head to deal with the Social Security cards and birth certificates issue facing California families and their children.
Second.
Any discussion?
Rachel Fox Tierney. I would be happy to participate in that. I've spoken to Sacramento Vital Statistics, the head of that, and I know a number of people over there. And yeah, so I'm volunteering to assist in whatever way I can.
Awesome. Can we do that or do we have to have a task force and then an interested parties meeting?
You can use assistance from people outside of the MAC to help educate yourself and come up with solutions.
Awesome. Okay. Any more discussion?
I do have a question. Ms. Abe, did you want to be part of that task force as well?
You're asking about the Social Security?
Mm-hmm.
I was already looking over the list for my
Okay.
my passion here.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Then motion stands.
Ms. Abe?
Yes.
Ms. Bralia?
Yes.
Ms. Dugan?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
This is way better than strategic planning.
Do we have any more discussion on this agenda item?
I think we
have
did so much today, but as long as it can be an ongoing,
Okay.
for people who weren't here, and we already got some committees going and work to tackle, so
Great.
it's a great start.
Okay. Okay, so moving to agenda item 6, which is discussion and possible action on a Midwifery Advisory Council chair. Do we want to pass on that since Ms. Holzer isn't here and she's indicated she would like to be appointed, or can we just appoint her in absence?
You can nominate her and vote on it. And
Okay.
the administrative manual does say that now is the time,
Okay,
and there's a quorum, so
okay, so,
it's fine to go forward.
okay, can I nominate people?
Yes.
Okay, I nominate Ms. Holzer as chair.
I'll second.
Any discussion on the council from the audience? Ms. Moriarty?
Ms. Abe?
Yes.
Ms. Abe?
Yes.
Ms. Bralia?
Yes.
Ms. Dugan?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Agenda item number 7 is discussion and possible action on a Midwifery Advisory Council vice chair. This was my first meeting as vice chair, so I'm willing to do it again if somebody wants to nominate me.
I'll nominate you.
Thanks.
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Ms. Abe?
Yes.
Ms. Bralia?
Yes.
Ms. Dugan?
Yes.
Ms. Perez?
Yes.
Okay. So we are ready for program updates.
Well, good afternoon. And before Tanya, Ms. Moriarty provides her update, I wanted to provide some information regarding the board's enforcement process. The first thing I would like to point out is that the board's investigation process is actually an objective investigation. It's trying to either prove or disprove the allegations. As I previously stated at a meeting, when reviewing a complaint, if the complaint is regarding the quality of care of a licensee, the board will obtain the medical records and any other relevant evidence and send it to an expert for review. For cases regarding midwifery, this individual would be a licensed midwife who is contracted with the board to provide expert reviewer services. It is imperative that the opinion provided is an objective review of the allegations provided in the complaint, and it's based upon the information gathered with no bias. Also, as previously stated, should an investigator or deputy attorney general reviewing a case determine that a second expert is needed, they will request a second opinion. There are several reasons for the need for a second expert, including the quality of the opinion, any bias on the part of the expert, any issues with a conflict, the expert did not address the issues identified, or any other reason the deputy believes a second review is warranted. It is up to the investigator and/or the deputy to determine who that other expert will be based upon their review of the case. There may be instances where that second expert may not be a licensed midwife. If a licensee has an issue with the expert who has provided a review of their case, the appropriate place to bring these issues forward is as an administrative hearing on the matter. Any concerns can be expressed to an administrative law judge who will be reviewing the case to determine whether the expert will be permitted to testify in the case, and if so, whether the expert is credible. Another issue I'd like to just address a little bit more, talking about the practice guidelines, which I know you have a task force for, is again, this document was put together after AB 1308 was passed, the current one. That's the practice guidelines for California midwives that's on the website. This document, as with other similar documents that the board has developed, are guidelines. As stated in the guidelines themselves, and I'm going to quote from it, this document provides a framework to identify the professional responsibilities of licensed midwives and permit an individual midwives practice to be rationally evaluated to ensure that it is safe, ethical, and consistent with the professional practice of licensed midwifery in California. However, these practice guidelines are not intended to replace the clinical judgment of the licensed midwife, end of quote. While these provide guidance to licensees, the standard of care is still reviewed on a case-by-case basis based upon the specific circumstances at the specific instance the care is being provided. And then finally, the California Code of Regulations, Section 1379.19, the board understands that this regulation remains in the section, although AB 1308 has changed the laws providing the authority for this section. As resources permit, the board will be working to amend all regulations that need to be amended due to legislation that has passed, and then we'll submit proposed changes to the language. And then Tanya's going to provide the complete program update for the rest of the documents in there.
Okay. Please turn to tab 8A1 of the packet for the Midwifery Program licensing statistics. In the third quarter of the fiscal year 2018-2019, the board received 15 new applications, issued 15 new licenses, and renewed 51 licenses. In the fourth quarter of the fiscal year 2018-2019, the board received 9 new applications, issued 11 new licenses, and renewed 47 licenses. As of July 1st, 2019, there were 422 renewed and current midwifery licenses. Please turn to page 8B1. In the third quarter of the fiscal year 2018-2019, the board received 37 transfer of planned out-of-hospital delivery to hospital reporting forms for licensed midwives. In the fourth quarter of the fiscal year 2018-2019, the board received 60 transfer of planned out-of-hospital delivery to hospital reporting forms for licensed midwives. Please turn to page 8C1 for enforcement statistics for licensed midwives. In the third quarter, the board received 10 complaints and referred 2 for investigation. In the fourth quarter of the fiscal year 2018-2019, the enforcement statistics show that the board received 4 complaints and referred 2 for investigation. Please turn to page 8C2. The board received 4 complaints in the third quarter of the 2018-2019 fiscal year for unlicensed midwives. In the fourth quarter, the board did not receive any complaints for unlicensed midwives. Please turn to page 8C3 for enforcement statistics for transfer of planned out-of-hospital delivery to hospital reporting forms for licensed midwives. In the third quarter of the 2018-2019 fiscal year, 0 were referred for investigation. In the fourth quarter, 1 was referred for investigation. Please turn to page 8C4 for the third quarter of the 2018-2019 fiscal year. The board received 1 transfer of planned out-of-hospital delivery to hospital reporting forms for unlicensed midwives. In the fourth quarter, the board did not receive any transfer of planned out-of-hospital delivery to hospital reporting forms for unlicensed midwives. Do we have any questions?
I have a question. My question is it possible, just like the counties, we have everything broken down by county, is it possible to also have, it would be interesting to hear where these hospital reporting forms are coming from, if they're all coming from one hospital, if they're coming from, is that possible, something that's possible to see? I feel like they're all mine and they're all coming from Pasadena.
Yes, I believe that is possible, yes.
Any more comments from the council? Comments from the audience?
I have a clarification question on the statistics for complaints. What I'd like to know is when we look at this and we see that in Q1, 5 complaints were received and 4 complaints were closed, and then there's a complaint that's referred for investigation. What I'd like to know is, let's look at Q2 because there's something in each one of those categories. So 7 complaints were received, so that's self-explanatory. Of the 6 that were closed, that isn't necessarily a subset of the 7, am I correct? It could be 6 were closed and maybe 3 of them were a subset of the 7 and 3 of them came from the 5 that were reported the previous quarter. Is that right?
Yes, that's
Okay. And so then the same thing would be true if, one was referred for investigation, but that isn't necessarily of the 7, correct? It could be from a prior quarter.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any more comment from the audience? Thank you, Ms. Moriarty. Okay, we have tabled agenda item number 9 to the December meeting. Agenda item number 10, future agenda items. I'm sorry.
On the last program update
Oh,
I'm going to be doing. So I'll introduce myself.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
That's okay. Good afternoon. My name is Natalie Lowe. I know some of you from a while ago, but I am currently working in the Information Systems branch and will be providing an update on the Licensed Midwife Annual Report. I'm going to, want to control it? Okay. If you have not already, there are copies available in the back if you'd like to pick one up. I'm going to go through it a little bit with you and provide an update between this year's report and last year's. Of note, this is our first year utilizing the new Licensed Midwife Annual Report system that was created by ISB staff working with OSHPD. We'd like to thank OSHPD for their assistance in getting this program implemented. As it is the first year of a new report, there are certain things that we have found that needed to be updated throughout the process. The final report is based on the several years of requests by the licensed midwife community as well as the MAC and board staff. There were several interested parties meetings over the years. There were documents provided by MAC members and task force. All of those requests have been compiled into providing the data that is in this report. Many of the data elements are the same as what was provided in the previous LMAR report. However, the way the system was configured allowed data to be entered in a manner where duplicative information was not being added to different areas of the report. So I'm sure most of you, hopefully all of you, have submitted your report, so you're familiar with the new system. But of note, there were 483 midwives that were expected to report during the year, and a total of 391 submitted their reports using the new system. Every single one of the reports that were done were completed online. There were no paper forms submitted, and we are hopeful that this continues as the data collection is a little bit more complex than it has been in past years as we're requesting additional data elements. Of the 92 that were unreported, those numbers included midwives that were in delinquent status as well as current for the expected to report. So we always like to look into, of those 92, is that really an accurate depiction of who should have reported. For example, 31 of those 92 that did not report are in current status. The remaining are delinquent status that may not even be practicing in California. There are 7 with out-of-state licenses. There are 4 in retired status. 2 of them have gone into canceled status since the beginning of the reporting period. So really, there's about 35 that probably should have reported, but they didn't. And that will prevent them from renewing their next renewal cycle if they do not complete the LMAR by then. Just to break that down a little bit. The services provided in California, this was the question where it asked how many midwives were reporting actually provided services or supervised the student midwife. That number reported was 266, which is up from 272 last year. So it's just a slight increase. Scroll down. I'm sorry, 260. It was 260 last year, so just a slight increase. Client services, the total number of clients served as primary caregiver during this calendar year increased 294 compared to last year. There are also in the client services section some items that have been removed from previous reports, and that included questions relating to physician supervision and collaborative care, as that's no longer applicable. So the total number of clients served in the report was 4,478. I'll go ahead and scroll down. One of the requests that had been made several times over the last few years was to separate data relating to death from certain tables in the chart and to put it into their own section. So in last year's and previous year's reports, there was a chart very similar to this, but it included infant demise and maternal deaths also. So we've separated that out, and this is only pertaining to out-of-hospital births per county now. Some additional data elements that have been added were the number of preterm, term, and post-term births. So it's giving a better idea of the breakdown of the actual live births attended out of hospital. The last column on this chart, the number of low birth weight term infants, that was a new data element requested, and that number is only specific to that center column of term births. I just want to bring attention to that. It is a subset of the term births, not preterm and not post-term. The total number of out-of-hospital births per county was 3,538, and that number was up from last year by 241 births attended out of hospital. And then if you can scroll down. You can go to all the way to the next page. No, sorry, just keep scrolling. Yep. So this top table, out of hospital birth outcomes, this is a subset of that data on the previous chart. So where I mentioned there were 3,538 births occurring out of hospital. The planned out-of-hospital births at the onset of labor was 4,148. The next number is showing the actual completed births out of hospital. There is an asterisk on here where sets of twins or multiples of a higher gestation is only counted as one birth. So that 3,535 is different than that previous breakdown by county, as the county chart is counting each birth. Just want to bring that attention to that. We also added additional data elements regarding VBACs as had been requested. So in the top chart, the non-VBAC completed singleton breech live born deliveries, that was a number that was added in, and I think is being tracked a little bit more appropriately in the report. That number increased significantly from what was reported in previous years. However, the way the reporting system was done before, I'm not sure it was being captured in the same manner. So we'll see how this number compares over the next few years. There were 3 sets of twins delivered out of hospital, which is always a number that we like to bring attention to, as higher order multiples and twins are not allowed to be delivered out of hospital unless there's a precipitous birth, which is also another data element that we've added throughout the report, that if you delivered twins, was it precipitous? If there was a breech delivery, was it precipitous? So those are items that we are trying to capture on this report. The next section is out-of-hospital VBAC deliveries and some client history related to client deliveries. In past reports, we listed completed VBACs, and that was it for the most part on VBAC data. It never asked how many were attempted or how many were planned. And so there was never any way to compare those numbers to see the outcomes of VBACs. As you can see this year, there were 187 planned at the onset of term labor or term rupture, and only 151 were completed out of hospital. Of the VBACs that were completed, there was 1 breech live-born delivery out of hospital. We also provided the breakdown on the VBAC gestational ages for the infants. 2 were 42 weeks or more, which is also a number that should be concerning. The next section is the client history for VBAC clients. It had been requested that additional information be provided, and because it is an aggregate report, it was collected and reported in this manner, but this is something that if what we're presenting is not beneficial, we could probably have it removed down the road, but if it is a benefit to you, then that's something that we'd like to hear your feedback on, since it's something totally new. All right, on the next page, antepartum transfer of care. These charts for the next couple of pages are very similar to the previous reporting charts that we provided over the years. There were a couple of additional items added to the reasons for transfer. And the reason for that mainly was to try to reduce the amount of others being selected. So as part of those task force and interested parties meeting, additional items were added. I know that there were, I want to say, let me see if it's on here. Sorry. I'll get there. Okay, so the charts are very much the same. We have the antepartum, elective, and urgent, the intrapartum, elective, and urgent, and then postpartum for the client and the infant. Again, as I mentioned, that the report was created in a way that there would not be duplicates, and if there was a transfer, there had to be an outcome of the transfer. Even if you don't know what that outcome was, you had to select an answer. So all of the numbers throughout the chart are matching up and making sense that if we have a transfer, we have an outcome. Almost all of the transfer charts decreased, some of them significantly. The antepartum urgent is down 38 from last year. The intrapartum is down 9. Postpartum transfer of care for the client it was reduced by 48. The only one that I saw an increase on from last year was the intrapartum transfer of care urgent, which was 37, or I'm sorry, up 37. And of that 107, 47 were for fetal heart tones, non-reassuring fetal heart tones. So that was a pretty significant number reported. Also, there was 12 others. So those are also items that you may want to be looking at over the years to decide if there's an additional item that should be added in there that's not being captured or listed out there specifically. Moving on to the birth outcomes after transfer of care. So in this report, we added additional data elements requested for delivery types. Before, the report only included vaginal birth and cesarean deliveries. We've now added in VBAC to be able to capture the outcome if it was a VBAC delivery. Because not everyone was able to report the outcome after transfer of care, we added in a new column for delivery method unknown. And because if you don't know the outcome, you most likely don't know the delivery method either. So that's why that additional column was added. Again, every outcome, there is a transfer on the previous table, so the numbers are all matching there. And there were total client transfer reported were 1,005, and infants transferred were 62. On the next page, we get into the death section of the chart. Before, we didn't report on fetal demise. That was added, so there's a new column there. There were 12 fetal demise reported, 5 infant deaths reported, and 0 maternal deaths. And that is the same as last year for maternal. There were 0 reported. Infant deaths, there were 2 less reported this year. And again, fetal demise, we will have to start tracking that over the years to be able to compare that to the data. So for the fetal demise, again, this was brand new. So the items listed there were created based on the MAC meetings and interested parties meetings. There's a subset of if the fetal demise was during labor after 37 and 07 weeks gestation, was the demise diagnosed prior to labor by a physician and later delivered out of hospital by the midwife. So that number is not added into the total. I'm sorry. There we go. I don't think I said that right. So there are a total of 12 fetal demise. That item with the arrow that says cases where fetal demise was diagnosed, that is not included in the total. So, yeah, okay. Clear as mud. The next section, infant death. Again, total of 5 were reported. This is just providing additional information. If it was early infant, late infant, all of these being reported were early infant. And 0 maternal deaths. On the last page, these were the complications leading to fetal demise, infant and or maternal death. The numbers are so minimal that, you can take a look at them and it'll make more sense to you as midwives than it would to me. So that is all I have for the update on the report. If you have any questions or concerns or feedback, I'd be happy to answer anything I can.
Thank you. It's a great report. How soon will it be available? Is it something available to the public or not?
This report is available to the public, and we will be posting it to our website, as well as a summary of this report is included in the board's annual report also. So after today's meeting, if there's no questions, concerns, then we'll be getting that posted online.
That's great. I had another question. So when they do the reporting, do they report demographics for clients or no?
The information's reported aggregate, so it's not live births are reported per county, and deaths, but there's no other additional information provided.
Okay.
Am I
That
not
would be
answering?
so valuable if we knew if they were Native American, African American, Caucasian, just in terms of like county work, because there's a perinatal equity initiative that is out, and they're using all this data to determine how to improve African American maternal outcomes. And if these are amazing statistics. So if we knew that 25% of all these midwives, saw African American babies, and these were the outcomes, that would be so powerful. So that's too bad that we don't know that, because that information is needed as they approve the money to be released next month. So,
Although it's not reported right now, it's a possibility that we could look into adding that for future reporting periods.
I'm not sure why it hasn't been added. Wow, because they counted in the other in this kind of data for hospitals, they have it already. So I'm just like amazed.
Well, it's good that you are now on the MAC to bring those items to our attention.
Wow, really?
So, there you go.
Oh, that's blowing my mind. I'm sorry. I'm having an over-the-top reaction right now. That's amazing.
Ms. Abe, the LMAR is what the board asks for is laid out in law.
Right. So it would require
Sure, I can
legislation, a
understand that.
statute change. Yeah.
Oh, I get that.
Okay.
It still doesn't change that would be valuable information. That doesn't change the fact that they collected on if I had my baby at the hospital. They know I'm African American. They know if I smoke. Like, they know so many things about me that are scary. So, and they release money. It's all connected to that. So I was just amazed. I'm just amazed right now. Thank you. I don't know how do you suggest that? I would definitely suggest. You say you have to change the law to collect that information? Wow, that's a good committee. That's amazing. Does anyone know why they would not have it might be too big. Okay, yeah, I'll get the information
Danielle,
later. I must not be understanding.
We'll talk.
Oh, okay.
And
Because this is very detailed, but you don't know that's wow.
as a member of the committee that created the first Elmar, I want to congratulate you. We have come so far from the first year when we accidentally recorded 12 maternal deaths. So I would like to thank everyone for all their work on this over the many years.
Carrie Sparrow LM. I think that the legislature gave us authority to add data items. We couldn't subtract any that they had dictated, but we could add them. So
Really?
yeah, it doesn't take an act of Congress to make it happen, to add those data elements. Am I right, Ms. Webb?
I'll look into that.
Okay, I'm pretty sure that whenever they gave us the authority to change things, they told us that we could add data elements.
Okay, so jumping back a second, are there any more comments from the council or questions?
How do we go about?
She's looking into it. Ms. Webb is looking into how we can make additions or changes.
Will we be able to add that to something at the end where we can bring that up for the next meeting? I don't know how to do that. That's why I'm asking.
It says any other information prescribed by the board in regulations. And right now, regulations are difficult to get through, but that there is an avenue for adding other data points.
That's good. I don't know where there would be any pushback to add that. They already have it, so I'm not sure how to go about it. But I would really want to have the steps, because I think I know the California legislature, they already voted for things like this. I don't see why they would push back.
Absolutely.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Ms. Davis.
Yes, Rosanna Davis. I wanted to make sure that I made my request in the proper place. Thank you, Ms. Lowe. That was an excellent report, and congratulations to everyone that worked on these changes. This report is wonderful and answers a lot of questions that are really important about the what's going on in the midwifery community. I wanted to formally request that when the midwives are ready to submit their final report, that they have a summary that they can review for accuracy before they push the submit button.
Okay, so that was actually something that I was planning on mentioning.
Oh, thank you.
That functionality is available to print a copy. A summary of the report is now in the system, so some midwives did have access to that. When it was brought to our attention when we went live with it, we went back and added that functionality in. Right now, though, it's after you submit your report, you have a PDF copy that you can save and review. That is one thing that we will be looking into, is providing a summary prior to hitting submit. So by next reporting year, we will have that functionality available.
Thank you.
I had one question, just out of curiosity. On page 10, under infant outcomes, we have healthy live-born infants with serious medical issues that either resolved or did not resolve by 4 weeks, demise prior to labor, demise diagnosed during labor, live-born infants who subsequently died. We don't have the information, and other. And I'm wondering, what else is there? You don't know.
These items were not compiled by myself
Okay.
or ISB. It was a compilation of all of the different interested parties and MAC meetings. There are some things that we noticed when compiling the data or creating the report to compile it, is that an infant outcome, there are fetal demise diagnosed prior to labor, which clearly is not an infant death.
Right.
So that data is something that we're going to be needing to look into, and removing most likely that option to select it as an outcome.
Okay.
Those are different things that we've noticed, but as for the specific items listed, we did not come up with that language. So
Okay.
if it's not appropriate, that's something that we can talk about removing from future reporting years. But
I was just curious. It seemed interesting that something else could have happened.
Of the 31, back to your first page when you said the 92 that didn't report of midwives, and you said you were trying to figure out that number, and 31 were current. Do you know if they needed training on how to use the system?
so any individual that had difficulty using the system that contacted the board, our ISB staff, Information Systems Branch staff, assisted multiple midwives in walking them through the process online. So if there was an individual that had an issue or couldn't get through the system and they contacted us, they were able to submit their report. If they couldn't do the report and they didn't contact us, we're obviously not aware of any of those individuals. So I would say most likely no. It wouldn't be a training issue or a midwife not being able to do it, as we would expect them to reach out to us for technical assistance.
And you sent them an email to say, if you need help, call us.
There were options available to select on the application itself for assistance that provided our contact information.
Thank you.
Hi. Thank you so much for working on this so much. It was a long push. I just have a question, and maybe I'm just tired, but on page 14, where there's fetal complications that in the leading to fetal demise. So it looks like there's 6 causes. But what I'm confused about is fetal demise diagnosed prior to labor. All fetal demises are happening before birth, right? And we've only got 1 diagnosed during labor and at delivery, and none diagnosed prior to labor. And yet we've got more than that in terms of fetal demises out of hospital. I'm doing the math and it isn't working for me. Maybe I can't do math anymore, but because there's 6 on page 14, there's 6 diagnosed out of hospital and 6 diagnosed after transfer, so that's 12. But then we only have a total in the birth outcomes. There's only 1 that's diagnosed as a fetal demise, either prior to labor or during labor or at delivery. So I don't understand how we got there.
I'm not comfortable answering that right now without looking into it a little bit more and putting some thought into what your scenario is.
Yeah.
If you look at fetal demise on page 13, that is 12. And then infant death is 5. And maternal death is 0. So that does add up to the numbers there.
It adds up to page 14, but on page 10, where it says fetal demise diagnosed prior to labor, that's 0. Fetal demise diagnosed during labor or at deliver, that's only 1. So you're either going to diagnose it prior to labor or during labor or at delivery if you're going to have a demise. Otherwise, you have a live-born infant that subsequently died, right?
Are you talking on infant outcome?
Yeah.
So that's what I was mentioning, is that that should be 0. First of all, this is infant outcome. So if it's fetal demise, it's not considered an infant.
Right. So those shouldn't even be
0.
there.
Right. So I'm assuming somebody selected this from a drop down incorrectly. But moving forward next year, those
Won't have that
will not
option?
even be in that table.
Okay, got it. Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Madeline Shernock, licensed midwife. I just wanted to say all the stuff on VBAC looks really great. And I wanted to point out that out of hospital VBAC, higher vaginal birth rate than most of our community hospitals, with marked safety associated with that. Really good to see. One question I had, I really thought I'd missed the question about collaborative care, but I guess it wasn't there at all. And so I'm wondering, the lack of questioning about physician supervision totally makes sense, but why the no collaborative care question? Because that's really important.
The initial intent was to show that we did not need supervision because we were collaborating appropriately. So
yeah, but that's not collaborative care. That's it asked if anyone had seen a physician at all during their pregnancy, and I feel like that's really useful, especially to people on managed care Medi-Cal, when I can't order them labs without them seeing a physician, for example. So can we put it back? Just that one question.
So the previous report asked you to enter the number of clients served who also receive collaborative care.
Yeah.
And as mentioned, that was to support the removal of physician supervision of licensed midwives. And that's why it was originally added to the report. But because physician supervision is not required, it's no longer needed to support another number. If that is something that is important to the midwifery community, then that would be something that we would possibly take into consideration. But it would have to be a consensus of the entire licensing population.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions, then I will be done. Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're done with 8. And again, I apologize for jumping over you. And we will table agenda item number 9 until the December meeting. So we are on agenda item number 10, future agenda items. So I have a question. Do we keep the same agenda if we don't add anything? Do we have to say what we want? Like, do we have to specifically say we want these things on the agenda for all of them?
I think it's good if you have
Okay.
something you want to see that you
Okay.
put it forward.
Okay. So anyone?
I mean, there's some that are standard, like, the
Right.
chair's report will be there, and the program update will be there.
Okay, so we do want to continue. Establishing goals, or does it have to?
Nope, that's
Because
fine.
it's ongoing.
That would be fine.
Okay. We don't need 6 or 7. We want to keep 9. Any other? How about reports from the task force reports? Any other agenda items?
Elmar items.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. The Elmar adding,
Discussion of adding
Demographics.
more to the Elmar.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Don't forget the microphones because we're still.
sorry. Okay, so an agenda item would be discussion of additional items to the Elmar.
Now, is this for data on clients or data on midwives?
Clients.
I'm sorry,
What-
are you asking me?
Yes. What?
Well, clients, could it be both? Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
It
the
could
Elmar
it be part of the discussion or?
the Elmar wouldn't be to collect data on midwives, and that's
No,
what
I
did.
know that. I do
Okay.
know that. Thank you for clarifying. Yes, no, I meant, I was asking how many African American women were VBAC, like how many had fetal, how many had successful, like that we can't tie it to populations.
Right.
So
Yeah.
to answer your question,
Okay.
yes.
Good catch. Anyone else on the board?
When we also talked about with Elmar, we had requested to find out where those hospital reporting forms were coming from or what counties they were coming from. Be great if that could be, if we could have that information. We were told we could have that information, so
Right.
maybe we
So
could have
does
that for the
need
next
to be
meeting.
an agenda item, or is it just part of a report?
Review that.
I think it can be added to the program report, it sounds like.
Okay.
At least, and this, we'll have to take a closer look, because if it's so detailed that individuals could be identified, we wouldn't report that out. But if it's, we possibly could say that 80 reporting forms came from 5 different hospitals. That might be a possibility.
Or counties. Like what if they're all coming from one county?
Well, then we would say one county, it could be something that broad.
Right.
So I'm curious, well, I guess we're just talking about agenda items. Any more comment from the board? Do we ask for comments from the audience? Yeah. Okay. Any comments or suggestions from the audience? No? Okay. Well, that is the agenda. So, thank you everyone for coming. The meeting is adjourned.